It's time for Sustainable Living with Glenn Boblitz, the show that helps you be prepared to care for your family regardless of the circumstances that may come your way. Now, here's your host for today, Mark Lamb.
In the studio with Glenn Boblitz. Thank you, Janet, for the intro. We're talking about regenerative, did I get the word right?
Yep.
Regenerative farming.
That goes into a lot of stuff. It's not just the big farms that are catching on to this.
Mm-hmm.
It can be applied to your garden.
Right.
You know, it's all the same principles applied to your garden or your little pasture that you may have, raising sheep, goats, cows, if you can afford them. Boy, you're lucky if you got a few cows.
We were talking about beef prices before we opened the mics.
Yeah, they keep going up.
Yeah.
You can't afford to buy them. But somebody's buying them because they're selling the crap out of them, and it keeps driving prices on up, you know, because there's a shortage of them. So, you know, just hold on, folks.
I mean, you consider beef a commodity, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like gold in a sense.
Well, we get a lot of beef from, like, Venezuela. I'm not sure that's going to continue to happen with Maduro being chased down. But... you know, a lot of small farmers around here trying to make it, and they made a good lick if they had some extra cattle.
Yeah.
It's a tough business. It's always been a tough business, but the cost of doing that business is just going through the roof.
Well, that's
everything
it.
about it.
Where does it? You know, you and I both listened to Beck. He had some lady on there. I don't know if you heard this particular day. She, you know, I guess supported Trump and, you know, supported everything he did, and she's frustrated. And her and her husband make good money.
Right.
They live in, here's part of the issue. They live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, which is like one of the highest places in the country to live. And they're renting at $3,000 a month. They said at the rate they're going, they can't save enough money to get a down payment together. And she's frustrated, not just for them, but for the American dream, which is owning your own home and that kind of thing.
Sure.
You know, I mean, you think about it. Even let's get out of Dallas-Fort Worth. Let's talk about our own local area here in Central Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's nothing to drop 3 1/4 for a house now. And that's the 3 1/4 houses were the houses I was doing in Ivy Hill 15, 20 years ago.
It's the percentage rate that's killing you, too. You know, you might be buying that house for that amount, but you can't make the payments because of the interest rates.
And that's a whole nother issue.
You know, you say, okay, but, you know, I paid that amount for the house, and my payments should be this, and then you start calculating in the interest, and you go, oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't afford this house.
Yeah, you buy a $800,000 house, good chance you're going to pay close to $2 million for it. It's over $2.5 million.
Good chance you'll go bankrupt.
Yeah, true.
You know, because crap happens when you own a house just all the time. That's a fact, unless you bought some brand new house and you pretty much, you know, you're stuck.
And I don't mean to come out of the gate starting about that. It's just that where does it end? Does it end, Glenn?
Not for a while. Not for a while. It just seems like we're just headed towards a cliff with pricing wise,
right?
With everything,
right?
And I don't see it reversing, and I don't see wages keeping up. It's just not going to.
Right.
I mean, companies, especially bigger companies, have been fighting wages for a long time to keep them as low as they have.
Sure.
Artificially low in some cases, but they brought in all the Mexican labor, and now that's leaving. So,
yeah.
You got to remember, you know, all those people that they're sending out of here, not all of them for sure, but a lot of them that they're sending out are just bad people to start with. But a lot of them had jobs.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are self-deporting because they don't want to be caught up in it and get sent to a wrong country.
Oh, yeah. Or down to the Everglades in Florida.
Yeah.
You know.
So we're losing a pretty good population of workers that traditionally have been a little lower paid than educated, skilled jobs.
Sure.
So that they took those kind of jobs, and, you know, God bless them for doing it. But they should have done it the right way to start with. That's the whole point there. But,
sure.
back to our subject and the poor farmer. Farms are getting hit from all sides.
Mm-hmm.
Energy being one of them. You
Yes.
know, energy costs have seemed to creeped up too, and that's an economy killer, and that worries me a little.
Right.
Just natural disasters popping off, that worries me a little. So there's a lot of things hanging over our head that's not real good.
Not to mention the things brewing in Ukraine and Russia now, because that has
Oh,
ramped
you mean
up.
like the war?
The war has ramped up.
That's so bad for everybody concerned.
It really
Everybody's got their fingers in that pie. It's too much money flying around.
Yeah.
Let us not forget that Ukraine was a huge grain producer for the world.
Yeah.
That is very fertile farmland there.
Yes.
And it's kind of out of commission at the moment. So, that puts pressure somewhere else.
Yeah.
And it's happening all over the world. It's not just there. China's not doing real good either.
Right.
They've had some uprisings that they're kind of afraid that stuff's going to get out of control.
That's, and let's just...
And you're not going to hear that.
Right.
Unless you dig deep somewhere. So
that'll be suppressed.
That's kind of odd. China is kind of odd. They're finding out that China is not the superpower we think.
Mm-hmm.
Everything they call it tofu military, tofu
Really?
building, tofu construction.
Yeah.
Tofu don't hold up to nothing.
Right.
It's spongy. It's full of holes.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what's going to happen over there. I got enough stuff to take care of on my farm.
Right.
I keep my eye on it because
Sure.
it's darn sure important. But
Right.
we just need to get something stable here. Be sustainable here.
Yes.
Or the rest won't matter anyway.
True. That's true.
So the regenerative farming, was probably started back 15, 20 years ago to take hold. And guys like Gabe Brown, Ray Archuleta, Joe Saladin from our area, they're all trying to promote this. And Joe Saladin, he's kind of a wild card in that group anyway. Everybody thinks he's crazy and they've thrown rocks at him, but he's pretty much right on the money. But guys like Gabe Brown, he is a mega farmer.
Okay.
Started out just, pretty good sized farm, family farm. I think he's out in the Northwest, which is not a whole lot of water out there. So that's a tough job. So he was doing mostly cattle farming, but he found a better way, folks. Rather than to take off the land, he gave back to the land and then let the land feed him and feed his cattle. He said, I don't take from the land anymore. And it's made a big difference in his farming operation and, more importantly, the profit margin.
Right.
So he had to diversify a little bit, do some things different, had to take a lot of ridicule, and then all of a sudden he is the star of the show.
Right.
Because he went from, a couple 100 acres, which is not a very big farm out there, to a couple 1,000 acres to 10,000 acres.
Okay.
That's what he controls as far as a farmer, because the other farmers couldn't make it because they were using traditional farming methods and they just couldn't make it. They had to put too much input to get very little output. So he takes over the farm, brings it into regenerative agriculture practices, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, and they just come back alive. And that's what I want you to do in your gardens, in your pastures. I mean, if you're raising anything out there and all you have is just fescue, you're not getting the benefit of everything that's in nature that can help you. The more diversified your field is, with whatever you decide to plant out there or allow to come back, it will benefit you. Every plant out there has a corresponding microbe and fungi and beneficial insects, but they don't come or thrive unless that plant is there. That's why the Great Plains, the sod was 14 inches thick.
Wow.
Because it was so diversified.
Wow. Holy cow.
There was cool season grasses, warm season grasses, shrubs, all of that. It was a symbiotic relationship to all of them, and that's what the whole basis of regenerative agriculture is: symbiotic relationships between everything.
Gotcha.
Starting with the living soils, as we've talked about in several shows. So there's 4 principles, and we'll get into them. And I'll rattle them off, and then we'll go back.
Okay.
So it's integrating your livestock, regardless of what you have, with the poultry. Now, those two work together, just like the Great Plains. So we'll talk more about that.
Okay.
You minimize the soil disturbance. Hardly any plowing, no plowing if you can get away with it,
all right,
is much better. The living root mass, we just kind of touched on that. That's the 3rd principle. And then there's crop diversity. We also just touched on that. Now we'll go back to all of them.
Okay.
So integrating the livestock with poultry. Well, I just told you that the Great Plains supported millions and millions of buffalo. And they're nothing more than wild, giant cattle. And these things are big. I don't know if you've been up next to a buffalo before.
I have not.
They are massive.
Yeah.
But there was millions of them. And they just grazed in these herds that were just so enormous that we were shocked they were that big. And they would tear up the ground a half a mile wide just while walking, grazing and walking.
Yeah.
Well, they leave a little trail behind them too. And the prairie chickens and all the wild birds, ground birds, would follow them. And they would find their little piles of droppings, and there would be all kinds of bugs in that pile.
And that's what they feasted on.
Right. And that's what fed all these birds. And they would kick the poop everywhere and refertilize the field. So you see, there was a cleanup crew. And it kept the bug population down. So I'm thinking there was a perfect system going on, and we went in and killed it. You know, put a railroad track through the middle of it, shot all the buffalo because they kept crossing the track. Yeah. And we kind of ruined the plains. Anyway, so the idea of having poultry out in your fields is where all these chicken tractors started. Have you seen a chicken tractor? You know what that is? That's kind of a funny thing to think of. You go, well, exactly what is that? Well, it's nothing more than a mobile chicken coop. It has nothing to do with chickens driving tractors. It is just a mobile chicken coop that protects the chicken at night so the foxes don't come in, coyotes don't come in and take all your chickens. You can actually feed these chickens by never letting them out of that coop, if there is a way for them to still get to the ground, but you still move it. You can make a sled type, one that's on wheels. They have some that, jacks the whole trailer up and you move it forward, 40 feet. So you're following your cattle. Now, how are you going to do that? I have a 40-acre field. You don't let the cattle into the 40-acre field. You put up a small fence and you move that temporary fence, little electric fence. They get used to it, shocked a couple times. They go, okay, I know not to touch that white wire. So you just give them a small patch of good grass. And then 3 to 5 days later, you move it over another 20 feet. Now, yes, you have to move it, but what you're doing is forcing them to eat all the grasses and not cherry pick. If you put them out there, they're going to try to eat all the really good stuff, the alfalfa, the clovers, that kind of stuff. So there's a competition goes on between cattle, whether you know it or not, and all animals like that. If the guy next to him is eating at a patch of clover, the bigger cow bumps him out of the way and says, let me have that. So they get excited when you open the fence. So moving them is not a big deal. As soon as you open the fence up, they rush in because it's new, fresh grass. There's all kinds of good stuff. Then you block off what they just were on.
So it can regenerate.
So And you don't let them eat it down to the nub. You
Right.
you just make them eat the tops down till it gets about 8 to 10 inches high, and then move them again.
Yeah.
So this will work whether you have 2 cattle or 200. You just have to make the size and do a little math and go, okay, they're going to eat X number of square feet per cattle. You move it over. That gives the grass behind you time to heal. Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised how fast it will heal because chickens are kick and poop around.
Right.
They're eating bugs.
They're fertilizing.
Right. You don't have to spray your fields for this, that, or the other. And
Yeah.
they keep everything mowed down so there's no weeds that get extra big.
Right.
You know, they get clipped off too. So they never get a chance to go to seed and reseed and cause a weed problem.
Yeah. Interesting.
The more you do this, the stronger the grass strains become. And
Did not know that.
right.
Interesting.
So you have a really good program set up where things are helping one another. Well, the whole time this is going off, all this carbon is going into the soil. Mm-hmm. You know, poop in, poop out.
Right.
Chickens recycle it one more time.
Well, isn't chicken manure like super high in
It's very high in
nitrogen?
nitrogen. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also because they're eating bugs.
Okay.
That's a big food source for them. They're not eating the grasses as much as the bugs that are coming from the grass being disturbed, from the cow poop that's being out in the field, or sheep, or whatever it is. So it's all working pretty good, and that's the purpose of having those chickens follow it. They're the cleanup crew, they're the bug control, and they're the fertilizer. Now, fertilizer costs a farmer, even in a hayfield.
Yeah.
He's going to put down lime in the fall, which is not super expensive, but it's still a big expense. Right. But fertilizer in the spring, when the grass starts to grow, is super expensive. It's a petroleum product. As price of petroleum goes up, so does fertilizer.
Yeah.
Well, that may be as much as 20% of his total farm income.
Okay.
Not his profit, total farm income. Mm-hmm. So if you can give just that part of the budget back to him, because he don't have to spend it.
Right.
The cattle are fertilizing, the chickens are fertilizing, and you get a better rotation. Now, so where is the energy input? It's the sun. You're growing your energy in that grass, being converted into meat, into poop, into chickens, into eggs.
Yeah.
Right? You see?
You're getting all kinds of benefits.
Right. The chickens are not just, freeloaders here.
Sure.
At $3 and $4 a dozen, and you got 50 chickens out there, it doesn't take long to figure out you're going to have to sell eggs. Right. And that's the secondary market for the farmer. And he goes, well, it's not a lot of money, but I'm not losing money.
Hey,
But they're producing my fertilizer.
Right.
So you go, wow, I'm starting to get on the green numbers in my budget.
Sure.
I'm not in the red anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what's happening here. They'll also eat, the chickens will also eat small seeds. So if you have a lot of weed seeds in there, they will eat those also.
Okay.
And that's another benefit of the weed control. All right. Second one is minimizing soil disturbance. If you don't have to run over that field over and over again with a tractor, either spreading fertilizer or reseeding, pesticides, a tractor is heavy.
Oh, yeah.
And you will compact the soil, whether you know it or not. You run a 5-ton tractor over any dirt, and you've compacted it.
Yeah.
That's the worst thing you can do.
Well, because water can't do its thing. And
all of the above.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't take hard to figure out that the path to your garden is hard as a rock.
Yeah.
If you walk that same path every day, it's hard as a rock. Well, same way at the field.
Sure.
Most people go, but what about this 1,000-pound cattle? His feet are shaped differently. Cloved hoof. It looks like 2 little miniature plows, does it not?
Well, true.
So when he walks, he digs those front toes in, and as he walks forward, he kicks a little divot out
Yeah.
for seeds to fall into. So it's not like a 5-ton tractor.
Right.
His weight is actually distributed over 8 points, and so it's not nowhere near as bad.
True.
We're getting closer to the soils part here,
Okay.
which really has benefits to the soil to keep it from being compacted. And the other thing they do is stomp any grass into the ground, the dried matter, and that starts the decomposition process. So they're just hoof movements means a lot. If you think back to how many buffalo went across an area and just looks like a rototiller went across, and they were talking about this in the 1800s, where the buffalo would suddenly decide to move out of the area and just take off in a great herd, and it looked like you just plowed the field. But they tore up that ground, but they also brought the seed bank from below the ground back up. I mean, millions of hooves hitting the ground is going to tear the ground up.
Yeah, sure.
But yet it didn't kill the ground. In fact, it helped the ground. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, sure.
Even though we're right now talking about minimized soil disturbance, but they did it pretty much in a straight line. And the Great Plains were huge. People have no idea how big that was before man got out in the middle of it.
Right.
All right. To minimize the soil disturbance, it stops the erosion and loss of topsoil. If you plow a field or change crops out, you're going to lose a little topsoil every time it rains.
Okay.
Unless that water can be retained on the land. And worms are the best at retaining water because they drill holes in the ground.
Okay.
3 feet
That
down.
makes sense.
So if you've got if you have this giant sponge of a hole out there, like a kind of like a screen, a place for the water to go. If there's no holes in the ground, it just runs off the top. And when it does that, it picks up speed and the soil and moves it off your land. It'll end up in somebody else's valley.
Right.
And that's real bad.
Right. You want it stopping and hanging out in
Right.
yours.
And all the minerals and all that stuff is going with it. So that's not smart. So you got to have the worms to keep the soil on your land. Now, there's other agricultural practices that you can do by berming the land, setting up small catchment basins, especially if you're in a very hilly area. You want to direct the water, if you do have runoff, into a catchment basin.
Okay.
So you can keep that water on the land. That's very important. When you plow the soils, you've turned up all the carbon that's in the root systems, the old root systems, and it gets released back into the air. It just does because it was stored there at one time in the old roots. So now you've plowed it, cut the roots, and they're going to decompose. Well, a lot of that carbon dioxide, goes back up into the air. And believe it or not, the climate control nuts, always show you the statistics from February, March, and April. Because they can take a picture of the upper atmosphere, and it shows the carbon dioxide, how much is in there. You've seen a little color, it looks like colored clouds, and they show this bloom of CO2 in the air, and they blame it on cars and stuff, but that's not what's happened. What happens in February, March, and April? All the farmers are plowing.
Yeah, they're plowing and getting ready
and release all that carbon dioxide back up to the air.
Right, it's coming from the ground.
They take a picture of it and blame the car. When actually,
it's the ground.
It's the farming practices that are causing that bloom. I hate to blame it on the farmers, but
but it's
a fact.
Hey, they're going to work so you can have something nice.
There
to
is
eat
no blame
when you go on vacation in July.
Yeah. Right.
Some nice fruit, you vegans out there.
All right, when the ground is covered,
it's okay to be a vegan. I'm just saying.
I'm all about veggies, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, me too.
The third thing that it does in minimizing soil disturbance, it reduces soil temperature.
Okay.
Which keeps you from losing water, your moisture. If the ground gets a little too warm, your water evaporates and won't stay in your land. Your plants suffer from it.
Interesting.
But if you never plowed it up and you have this constant cover of thick grasses and all the previous year's mulch from the grass that fell down, because you've seen fields in the wintertime, it's all matted down. It's just where they've broken over and fell down. Well, come spring, stuff comes right up through that stuff, and it continues to decompose and make more soil. Okay.
Can I ask you a question? Because
Sure.
we were away for the weekend, and I noticed, driving through a lot of rural areas, and one particular, I think there was soybean on the right side and corn stalks on the left, for a tenth of a mile. But half of the corn stalks were already turning, brown.
Sure.
So what's, I mean, I know this may seem so simple, but what's going on there?
Well, we've probably had a month of drier weather. We haven't had a whole lot of rain.
Right.
So that's some of it. The corn is maturing out. It doesn't need as much water for the plant itself, because the corn should be developed by now, the ear corn.
Right.
So it's just a natural, it'll start drying from the bottom up. And some farmers will leave it out there till December, January. So you have a very dry matter, and they'll come through, harvest the corn, and either chop it all up, the stalks,
right,
and blow it out the back so it just stays on the land. It's
like a blanket.
Right.
Okay.
Or they will bale it up and feed it back to the cattle.
Oh, okay. So corn can hang out. Like I said, it may seem simple, but it can hang out that long without it getting destroyed and all that stuff.
And the farmer's out there checking that ear corn, because that's the money crop.
Right.
He'll go out there and check that ear corn, and it'll have a softness to it when you pop a kernel out of the ear corn.
Right.
And the old-fashioned way of doing it is biting it. If it's at the crack stage, you may be at 15 to 20% moisture, which is good enough to store.
Okay.
But if it's up at 22, 23% of moisture, the tip of that kernel will be kind of soft, where you could bite it and it don't crack.
Okay.
It's kind of mealy. So he knows, just by sheer practice of doing this, where the moisture content in his corn. Because if he puts corn in his silo or his corn bin that is too moist, it'll mold.
Okay.
And you don't want that.
Gotcha.
You ever see these big corn bins or grain bins?
Oh, yeah.
Now a silo...
Many movie scenes have been filmed, inside, fights going on and the guns down in the corn. And anyway...
A grain bin is different. It's more like a tin can.
Okay.
And they may be 15, 20 feet high. But a silo, they're 40 feet high. That's a different process.
Right.
But I didn't know this until recently. Recently is 15 years ago for me. But they actually blow air through the bottom.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
To keep moisture from coming up out of the ground and rotting the bottom of their corn.
Okay, got it.
But most time the corn has already been shelled. So it's kind of dense, and it'll start picking up heat just from decomposition, just small amounts. And that'll ruin his corn. So they blow air up underneath those things. There's a lot to farming. I mean, if you really knew how much work that poor farmer goes through, you'd say, do you need help?
And how much he has to know.
Who was it that did the story on the American farmer? He was a famous news broadcaster. Anyway, I'll think of that later.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
He went through everything that the farmer has to know.
Oh, it wasn't Paul Harvey, was it?
Paul Harvey.
Yeah.
He
talked about the partnership between the farmer and God.
30-minute rendition of what a farmer has to know and how absolutely phenomenal he is at his job.
Sure.
Anyway.
Wow.
If you got a good mechanic, right, you just talk him up.
Yeah, sure.
Well, what about the guy that grows your food? You better be talking him up even more.
Yeah.
All right, so we left off it reduces soil temperature and water loss by having something on the land that is growing, even if it's at its later stages through the winter. Believe it or not, if you have a field that has been in regenerative farming for more than 2 to 3 years, there is a biosphere of activity going on. The larger plants, like some of the Sudan grasses and sorghums, they're very tall. Well, in the wintertime, they fall over. And but it's not flat to the ground. There's a hollow spot in there. And clovers and things will actually grow all winter long. The cattle know that, even with a blanket of snow on top. Gabe Brown did this fantastic video, walked out into I think he's in North Dakota, in the North Dakota winter with 3 feet of snow on his fields. Wow. And the cattle did not come into the barn. Why? Because there was good grass underneath all that really tall stuff that had fell over.
Yeah, interesting.
He wanted his son to go out to film it. His son goes, this is your baby.
Right.
So he actually had to go out there with his cattle, and they were chest deep in snow, but they were rooting through it. So he pulled back the snow where this cow had just been, put the camera down, and there was all this green grass under there. All these little clovers, hairy vetch, all this stuff. And that's what the cattle were feeding on, fresh green grass in the middle of a North Dakota winter. I'd have never guessed that.
No, I thought it would have went dormant or something.
But if he'd have took that hay off, put it in his barn, all that grass would have been dead, bare. He would have had to replant next year. But see the symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
He's using it to his benefit. This works on your little local farm. It's the same thing. Now, you may have to plant some extra seeds out there using a seed drill. Seed drills do not plow the ground. They cut a slit, the seed drops in, the little rollers pack it back closed, and voila, you've planted seed or overseeded your field.
Right.
I suggest you start doing this, or you're going to continue to pay that 20% of your money that you get off your farm right back out to fertilizers. And then another probably 6% for weed control, and another 2% for bug control. Or you can do regenerative farming. Bugs taken care of by the chickens. Weeds are out-competed with these taller grasses, and there's several hundred different kinds of seed that you can put out there. So they get out-competed because the grass can outgrow the weed if you give it a chance.
Right.
Okay. Next principle, a living root mass. Now, this is where we're going underground. You increase that soil biome. The soil biome. Biome just means living stuff of all kinds. The worms, the nematodes, the good nematodes, the microbes, the fungi, the bacteria, all of that is adding to that soil. Then you have the roots themselves, which are all homes and food sources for all the biome that's living in there. You can go on and research some of this stuff. There's a great picture that I've seen where they took a backhoe and cut a slice of land, and they dug it out so you could stand beside it 6 feet deep, and it was just millions of roots all through it. And if you focused in on that picture, you would see the worms and all that stuff right in the middle of this grass roots. Now, what you can't see are the microscopic stuff. You could see the fungi because it looks like a little white web through there. It looks like cobwebs underground, but that's actually a very important mycorrhizal.
I think I've seen those.
Yeah. If you've ever turned over a rotten log and seen all that white, hairy looking stuff. Yeah. That's just the plant, not really a plant. In fact, it's its own species is fungi. That's doing its job. It's doing that, and there's lots of jobs that they could do, lots of different fungi. They all have a certain purpose. Some of them even help the plant when it comes to drought. they will find water and bring it to the plant. It's the most amazing thing I ever discovered.
Wow.
Was mycorrhizals. So anyway, we got all this stuff happening underground, the biome. So you have this living root mass, and you have a carbon capture because the roots are taking and holding everything that's being pulled in from the surface, using it to build their root system. You know, we are a carbon-based planet. So it takes the CO2 out of the air, pulls it in, uses the carbon to build with, and releases the oxygen. That's the O2 part. CO2.
Okay.
Carbon's for building stuff. O2 is for the air. So the roots are what's putting out this oxygen. The leaves of the plants are what's pulling in CO2. So it's a giant filter system. Third thing it does is it allows water filtration and retention. So if you have this biome working together, including the little worms, and I talked about that, drilling little holes, but there's microscopic holes also. There's the fungi that pull water from the surface and take it down below. So they're holding the water until it's needed. They've got little pockets that can hold water, like a little water bag. They will drill into the root system of any plant, spin this little coil, and then expand the coil. It stretches the cell inside and pump it full of water for later use. All the biggest trees in the forest, if you go down about 10 to 12 inches, you'll see all these little hairy nodules on this tree. That's the mycorrhizal has actually drilled into the root system and made this water storage system. That's why trees can make it through drought.
Okay.
But they couldn't make it if the fungi wasn't there. So apparently all these guys have figured out we got to work together, we'll all die. What a good principle, folks.
Sure.
We all got to work together or we're all going to die. Not that quite that dark, but, you know, it'll be better. Next thing that all these living plants are doing is capturing atmospheric nitrogen. They actually take nitrogen straight out of the air. I forgot, there's like 16 pounds of nitrogen, 16 to 22 pounds of nitrogen directly over top of your head. If you took a 2x2 square and drew it clear up to the upper atmosphere, and you weighed all the nitrogen that was floating around there in a gaseous form, it'd be about 22 pounds of it if you could put it in a block of fertilizer.
Right.
Well, they're filtering that out of the air, which is free fertilizer.
Right.
So they're grabbing fertilizer out of the air, pulling it down, and legumes do the best job at that. Beans. They pull that down and put it in the soil. Holy cow.
Yeah.
And then that part of the root may die one day and release that nitrogen because they regenerate themselves. They die off in the winter, shed that part of the root system because they don't need it. It releases the nitrogen for the next year. But the minute you plow it, it evaporates right back off.
Okay.
So that's not good. Your plants did all the work and you wasted it. Isn't that amazing?
It really is.
All this was going on, and 99% of the people didn't know about it. And I should correct that. A lot of people don't know what's going on because that 99% is no longer true because they found the money. The money is in the soil. And if you take care of that soil, it'll feed you.
Yeah.
It'll feed your cattle.
Sure.
But if you don't, it's going to drain your pockets. And that's what's happening to the American farmer. His pockets are being drained just because it's too costly to feed cattle. Quit feeding the cattle.
Yeah.
Feed the soil. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, it is.
All right, so we're getting on down to the fourth principle, crop diversity. Each crop that you plant brings different predators in as far as wanting to eat your crop. That's true. So there is a species of good bug that comes in with that crop also.
Okay.
As long as you don't spray him.
So to kill one thing, you might be killing the big.
If you kill that one beetle rather than smashing between your fingers,
Right.
You have killed 15 other good ones.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's the ratio. For every one bad bug, there's 15 good bugs.
Wow.
But let us not forget that spray does not stay on top of the plant.
It absorbs, right?
Every time it rains, it goes into the soil.
Oh, it goes in the soil, yeah.
Now, the little bacteria, if you look at them under a microscope, they look like a little beetle, or they look like some little other type of bug, but they look like a bug,
right?
Because same design.
Sure.
Same designer. So if you kill this tough beetle on top who's got a hard shell, and that stuff can kill it, what about the little soft-shelled stuff underground? You've killed it too. And you've broken that good cycle. You've broken the nutrient cycle that your plants need.
So I just have a question. Corporate farming, they don't care because they're all
it's a numbers game.
This is about the bottom line.
Right. And they know that I have to have X number of dollars for fertilizer,
right.
X number of dollars for pesticides, and at the end of it, I make a slim 4 to 5% profit margin on this huge farm.
Right.
Now, if you could give all those numbers back to him, and it works out probably 30, 40%. If I could give you 30 to 40% of your money back because you don't have to spend it, you'd be an idiot not to.
Right. Sure.
Now, you're going to have to suffer through the regenerative part where you're no longer spending money on the fertilizer as much. You're spending your money on new seed. You spent a big chunk of money on a seed drill, or you rent that seed drill. Those things are expensive.
Really?
Corporate size seed drill, $200,000. But the dang thing's 30 feet wide.
So it's drilling
because they're doing thousands of acres.
Sure.
Or you can get a small one. But what a lot of these farms doing, because they have to figure out that they have to replant all this seed, and especially in pasture lands. Too much land is in production to feed cattle. When cattle were not set up to start out with to eat corns and grains, they were meant to eat grass. You can look at their teeth and say, this is a grazing animal. All the inputs it takes to do corn or whatever kind of feed they're producing is just labor intensive, super costly, and it's really not what the cattle need. So now, because the cow is not getting all the nutrition it needs, now you got to give him shots because of all the diseases that come.
Right.
It is a vicious cycle that the American farmer is in.
Yeah.
And you got to break that cycle, and they are doing it. Make no mistake, they're going, holy crap, this actually works. I mean, Gabe Brown went from a beef farmer to a consultant almost overnight.
Wow.
He couldn't keep his farm going because so many people wanted him to talk because they seen what he did. He started speaking to his local agricultural. He was probably on the ag board in his local county.
Right.
And they go, how was your crop this year? He goes, I don't know. I didn't plant any. What do you mean you didn't plant any? He said, I don't need to. I'm not even baling hay anymore. What do you mean you're not baling hay? He said, I don't have to. I just move them, 60 feet at a time. Why would I bale hay when all I got to do is move an electric fence? He doesn't even need his tractor anymore.
Wow.
That was a huge thing to him, and it really, most of his equipment is little four-wheelers.
Yeah.
Four-wheel drive and side by side, just enough to send a guy out to move the fence over.
Right.
Enough to push the cattle and bring them back in when he goes to sell them to market. So he doesn't need the baler, and he doesn't need his combines. And
right.
I mean, those combines, $1.2 million, $1.3 million.
Yeah.
He doesn't do that anymore.
Right.
And has some of the prettiest cattle you've ever seen. But he went from a beef farmer to a guy that just goes around and tells people how to do this, and they pay him big bucks.
Right.
Now he's got a couple guys back at his farm that do nothing but go around and move fence, which is not a real skilled job, but he pays them big bucks. One farm manager to go around, look at the cattle, make sure that the mama cows and the baby cows are good, make sure the bull's happy, he's not tearing up jack. Holy cow. You know, this is such a smarter way to farm, people.
Well, and it's more environmentally friendly.
Oh, absolutely.
Big time.
So we're back to this biodiversity and crop diversity. Now, some people are always going to buy corn. Some people are always going to buy soybeans, you know, because there's a huge market for it. There's so many products that are made from it.
Sure.
But they're figuring out if you're going to have to do this, and you're going to have to grow corn because that's part of your business. You may not be into cattle, but you are a grain farmer. You can't grow corn 2 years in a row in the same spot and think it's going to do as good as it did the previous year.
Okay.
Because corn is a heavy feeder. It sucks a lot of nitrogen out of the ground, a lot of other little minerals. So they plant a legume right behind it. Remember I said legumes very good at fixing nitrogen right out of the air. We just talked about that.
Pulls it down.
So they plant soybeans next.
Yeah.
All right. In between these plantings, never leave the soil bare because A, you get evaporation, you lose a lot of good stuff that's in your soil. So they will go through, if they're going to, let's say, harvest their soybeans, they will harvest the beans and immediately plant some of the other cover crop in it. It may be alfalfa, or it just depends on what their regime is.
Yeah.
But they're still having to put a lot of fertilizers out. Now, is it the best way? But no, but it's better than the way they were doing it, because they figured out that you have to rotate those crops so you don't get infestations of bugs, because you plant too many times in the same area, that bug that comes and attacks you, he will stay around because, yep, this guy plants potatoes here every year. So the potato bugs are terrible.
Right.
But if you move your potato patch, potato bugs show up and on that side of the garden, they go, where's the potatoes?
Right.
Right. Okay. Same principle. The different grasses and things, that they all have a specific job. Ryegrass, for instance, goes very deep, and it pulls minerals from deep in the ground that may not be available to anybody else on top of the ground. So they bring that stuff to the surface into their plant, and when it dies off or gets eaten off, now we get a little bit of minerals that was too deep for everybody else.
Right.
But the rye says, I can get it. So if you've got all these different species all grabbing some different minerals and bringing it up, putting it on top of the ground where it can be used by other plants, wow, somebody's doing the other guy a favor.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, there it is. That's the beauty of diversity of crops, the diversity of the grasses. When that happens, different bacteria also show up. They all have a specific job. They like the guy, rye. He may have 5 friends in bacteria terms that work with him, and they all have a specific job to keep him going, of which they share with the mycorrhizals. So you can see the better your community is, the more productive you are. Holy crap, we ought to be studying this for ourselves. It's the same principle.
Right, for people. Yeah, sure.
As in heaven, so below. Okay,
Right.
if you
Sure.
same as on earth, same below the earth. Okay, well, let's copy what they're doing, because everything is productive that way. That's the way your community ought to be, but we're not. We're separatists.
Right.
We're single crops. You know, we got our single crop is this house. We live within this house. It's just a one crop system. We are not a community.
Right.
we're trying. We're trying with this program. We're trying with the classes we do. You need to try with us.
Well, yeah, and we've talked about things could get bad and you're going to be forced. Buddy, that's not the time to start building relationships.
Exactly. So with all this diversity and all these things bringing up all these minerals, the nutrient level of the grasses skyrockets, which everything in your immune system, about 80% of it comes through the gut. Same way with the cattle.
Right.
All of a sudden, the cattle is much healthier, much slicker. That was surprising to look at his cattle in the middle of winter and see their health. You can tell that's a healthy cow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they were not thin. You seen no ribs. Right. They was slick as ribbons.
Right.
I mean, you've seen show cattle. That's what his cattle look like out in the field.
Mm.
And it's because of their diet.
Mm-hmm.
They were getting everything that they needed right out of the ground because he made sure that it was there for them.
Yeah.
So that's very good. So if you're getting this excellent diet and your immune system is through the roof, what do you think the growth rate is for the younger cattle? It's just exponential.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be much better.
You go, how
a
is
healthier cow altogether.
How is this 3-month-old calf weigh 600 pounds? Because everything his body needs to grow is being given to him through what he's eating. He's got a super nutrition. Okay, I say all of that to say you need the same thing. You're no different than that cattle. You need good food. So if your garden is being plowed and not regenerative, you're losing nutrition out of your soil. You're probably killing the biome in there by putting all that stuff on there. Now, we try not to put anything on our garden. Potato bugs. It's a morning ritual to go out at first light and smash potato bugs. Now, of course, you got to wash your hands afterwards because it's all sticky and got orange poop on you because that's what comes out when you squish a potato bug. But okay, but I'm not killing everything and all the work that my wife and I are doing by putting that some type of powder on there to keep them off.
Right.
And if you kill them off as faster than they can multiply, you got them whipped. So there you are, folks. So all this biodiversity I keep talking about, when I pull my beans up, I immediately plant something else. I immediately, make sure that there is a cover on the ground, even if it's straw. If I've replanted something and I have a secondary crop, there's straw in between the rows.
Okay.
I don't want to lose my moisture.
Right.
I don't want to lose the minerals coming out. So straw is a good answer for me. Cover crops, things like turnips. Turnips cover a lot of ground really quickly. They germinate fast. When you're done with it and you want to plant something next spring, there's going to be turnips everywhere. If they went through the winter, they're probably not fit to eat except for maybe pigs. But if you run the rototiller through them, chew them all up, you're putting that nutrient right back in, and you're planting something anyway.
Yeah.
So keep your garden covered with something. And then you have a different method. Back to Eden, I've talked about that, where you have a permanent mulch layer going. It's like a flat compost pile. Rather than having a pile, it's your entire garden. Only it's about 4 inches thick. And you continually add to the top of it. That's a whole nother subject on just that method. I just refreshed my Back to Eden garden, which is my wife's favorite garden.
Okay.
Because she can weed the whole garden in about 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Now, can you say that? Anybody listening, how long does it take you to weed your garden? Oh, you're going to spend a couple of afternoons doing that one. There is no giant cleanup at the end of the year where weeds took over all four corners because you couldn't get your rototiller around it. It's not like that. It's just, here's one, pluck, and that's it. We only disturb the exact row it takes to put a seed in the ground, which is not but about 3 to 4 inches wide.
Okay.
That's it. and then we cover it right back up with the mulch.
Yeah.
Old mulch that is already decayed, or you can do it in straw.
Right.
And everything does really well, and I'm building the soil the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
If you went between my rows, dug down about 6 inches, did a cutaway to look at it, you'd see the green mulch on top, things starting to rot just below them about 1 inch down. Starts to get blacker. By the time you get to the bottom, it looks like chocolate cake you smashed in your hand.
Right.
Buddy, that's the stuff.
Yeah.
So when you plant the rows, those roots go straight down and then out.
Into that.
So there's actually roots growing right under my path that I normally would have compacted with my foot traffic, but it don't, because it's living. There's holes, there's worms, so it's not being compacted. And I don't have to walk down it but a few times just to pick. So I'm not in there all the time weeding because it doesn't get many.
Right.
So all of these principles that I talked about in regenerative farming will work in your garden. You know, rotating your crops, all that kind of stuff, diversity, you know, not planting that same thing. And don't plant the same plants every year. Try something new. Try a different bean. I'm not saying change your whole garden to suit my podcast here. I'm just saying move things around. You know, don't plant the same spot because if you had a problem there, you'll have a problem next time there too.
Right.
So that's my point. And when you do that, you're going to start getting all that nutrition from deep down because you have a biome now in that soil because you haven't killed it. It's all coming up out of the ground. All those nutrients that you've never had before are now in the plant that you're about to eat. So all the things that work for a cow will work for you. And that means being healthier.
Yeah.
And if that's not your goal, it should be.
Yeah.
Ta-da! That's regenerative farming in just a microcosm. You should really look at it if you're out there actually doing some farming. Consider it.
Yeah.
Strongly. And that's about all we have for right now.
Well, that's a good bit. Thank you, Glenn. We'll see you next time.
Join us again next week for Sustainable Living with Glenn Boblitz, helping you be prepared and not scared. This podcast drops every Friday anywhere you get your podcast.